The demonstrations carried out by the Venezuelan people to demand the release of more than 200 nationals kidnapped by the United States government in El Salvador. During the 48th edition of the National Fair of Cebu and its crosses, President Nicolás Maduro reiterated his condemnation of the kidnapping of 238 Venezuelan migrants in the concentration camp of El Salvador, the main center of the repressive prison system of the Nayib Bukele regime. Likewise, the Venezuelan president highlighted the unity of the Venezuelan people during the collection of signatures carried out in every Bolivar square of the country by the Venezuelan people in solidarity with the illegally detained young Venezuelan nationals. In this sense, the Venezuelan head of state highlighted the work of the Bolivarian government together with human rights organizations to achieve the release of the Venezuelan nationals and their safe and dignified return to the country. This Wednesday night, the plenary of the National Electoral Council of Ecuador approved the modification of the calendar for the second round of the 2025 general elections and established the spending caps. The electoral campaign will be extended from Sunday, March 23rd to April 10th. As will be recalled, it was initially set to begin one day later, that is to say on March 24th. According to the plenary of the highest electoral body, the purpose of the modification is to give the voter more time to know the proposals of the candidates. Likewise, the board of directors of the council fixed in $2,197,810.24 the limit of electoral expenses for both candidates. In Brazil, 10 months after the worst floods in its history, the state of Rio Grande do Sul is trying to recover normality. However, new extreme weather events and the lack of response from local authorities are raising alarms among the population. Our correspondent Ignacio Lemos tells us more.
Porto Alegre bears the scars of the biggest flood in its history, but everything indicates that the heavy rains that Rio Grande do Sul suffered 10 months ago will not be the last extreme weather event. The state's climatic reality is one of contrasts. A week ago, the heat was record-breaking, reaching 40 degrees Celsius.
It is not normal how hot it was last week. It was horrible.
Porto Alegre suele ser caliente y húmeda en verano.
Porto Alegre is usually hot and humid in summer, but the relative humidity in the air is currently around 30 to 20%. This is due to a meteorological phenomenon characterized by the elevation of the water temperature in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, which generates dry periods in the south of Brazil and rainy periods in the southeast and northeast.
People working in that heat, a lot of people felt sick. They had high blood pressure, they fainted.
Nuevamente, los más vulnerables fueron los más impactados.
The most vulnerable were the most impacted by the floods. Recycling cooperatives, which are essential to prevent waste from clogging drainage systems, have yet to receive support from local governments to recover the pressing machines that were damaged by the floods.
Damnificadas por las inundaciones.
We have to rebuild the floor. The presses, they got wet. It's still difficult. It's just the beginning.
En el último mes, una sequía severa afectó.
In the last month, a severe drought affected 210 of the 497 municipalities in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. The losses between 2020 and 2024 amount to about $54 billion. However, agribusiness, the sector responsible for the highest greenhouse gas emissions, does not take measures to diversify crops and reforestation to prevent climate change.
Para prevenir el cambio climático.
That investment in the agenda to protect biodiversity, combat desertification, and confront climate change is an action to protect the environment. But for those who are not moved by protecting Mother Nature, you can be sure that they will be moved by what will come out of their pockets every year.
El precio de los inmuebles se redujo exponencialmente.
The price of real estate fell exponentially in the regions that were flooded, and the increase in rents is putting pressure on the population of popular neighborhoods previously considered dangerous due to real estate speculation. The number of homeless people grew by almost 15% in the months following the floods.
There are areas that were not directly affected by the rains, but were affected by the increase in population in those neighborhoods, as if the periphery was inflated.
14 cocinas solidarias del movimiento Sin
14
Tierra.
solidarity kitchens of the landless movement deliver tons of food daily to the vulnerable population of Porto Alegre. The humanitarian actions continued in partnership with federal government programs after the floods.
Since
then, we have not stopped helping, and we started to discover more and more people who needed our help.
precisavam da nossa ajuda.
Los sedimentos de las inundaciones
The sediments of the floods in the rivers that reach the large cities of Rio Grande do Sul hinder drainage to the sea in the event of new torrential rains. A bad omen for a population that has not yet erased from its memory what happened in May 2024 and is already experiencing new extreme weather events.
nuevos eventos climáticos extremos. Ignacio Lemus para Telesur.
In Cuba, the fourth edition of the Patria International Colloquium closed on Wednesday in Havana after 3 days of discussions on the role of technologies, the counter-hegemonic media. Our correspondent Belén de los Santos has more details.
The fourth edition of the Patria International Colloquium came to a close in Havana after fostering 3 days of debates on the impact of technologies in media communications and the role in the construction of counter-hegemonic narratives from the global south.
We're seeing a massive lack of information, disinformation, and it's so important that we can unite here to really work on this fight back, the resistance, and to use social media and media communications in general as a crucial tool to really challenge the imperialist narratives that have prevailed for years and years.
Hosted by the University of Havana, this year's event gathered more than 400 delegates from 47 countries under the slogan "We are Peoples Weaving Networks," a space for communicators and experts to interact and share their collective experiences through workshops, panels, and conferences, tying the bonds of solidarity and international cooperation.
It's the second time I come here, and the reason why I came again is because I think it's one of the most beautiful experiences that you can attend for meeting people mainly from the global south that are working in sometimes in very hard conditions and that are working with a very brave approach for social justice.
This year's event was dedicated to Latin American multi-platform teleSUR on its 20th anniversary, highlighting the media outlet's trajectory focused on giving voice to the peoples of the Global South in the fight against misinformation. To this purpose, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel visited teleSUR's exhibition at Patria and congratulated the multimedia on its continuous effort to carry on the legacy of the revolutionary leaders of our America.
teleSUR is the result of their work, Chavez and Fidel Castro. And what better way to honor him 20 years later by this event, which not only includes journalists we normally see from Latin America. I'm impressed how over the last few years, especially with Patricia and other comments at the head of teleSUR, they developed links with important countries.
At the closing event, teleSUR honored President Díaz-Canel, also Cuban revolutionary leader Raúl Castro and Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro with the teleSUR citizenship for their commitment to the truth of their peoples.
A continuación, tengo el honor de los que creen que otro mundo late en este.
Those who believe that another world beats within this south of ours, your legacy, unbreakable Cuba, indomitable Raúl, hopeful Venezuela is our signal in the air. Truth is not negotiable. Sovereignty is not for sale. Joe is rebellion. teleSUR, like you three, does not forget, does not get tired, does not fear. The Patria Grande embraces you.
No teme, la Patria Grande los abraza.
colloquium closed with a final declaration on the importance of strengthening counter-hegemonic media worldwide, urging media outlets to push for a new technological world order that prioritizes the global well-being above imperialist interests and guarantees universal access to technology. Next year's edition, which will be dedicated to Cuban revolutionary leader Fidel Castro on his 100th anniversary, is called to make the collaborative process set in motion in 2025 a reality. Belén de los Santos, Denise Araví, for teleSUR, Havana, Cuba.
Tecnoutopías y caminemos hacia ellas, a veces habitando las plataformas.
The president of Venezuela supported the demonstration